This is an RNZ podcast.
You have an unexpected skill.
Handstands?
No, yes.
I'm really
You
good at
are
the scissor
really
jump,
good. Yeah,
high jump.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the Fosbury flop. The
Can't do the Fosbury.
This is Hayden Donnell with the Midweek Mediawatch, by the way. No, Hayden's a very gifted musician.
Oh, is that an unexpected skill?
Sure.
I've always known about that.
I was surprised when I learned that you were a really good musician.
I wouldn't say really good.
You have a tui. You have multiple
Yeah, but that's
tuis.
songwriting. That's different. That's just me being emotional.
Welcome, Hayden. Nice to have you here. Let's do some watching of the media. There was a big poll
I've got
this week.
two tuis, by the way, not one.
Oh, yeah, okay. Big poll this week. Big poll coverage this week.
Huge poll coverage.
What did you make of
Sorry,
the coverage?
Quite offended for a second there. It was pretty pointed at times, Emil. There was some brutal questions. This one from the Prime Minister's post-cabinet press conference, particularly brutal.
Last Thursday in Cromwell, you said the entire country was grateful they didn't have Chris Hipkins as their Prime Minister anymore. Yet the poll today shows they prefer Chris Hipkins as Prime Minister. What is going wrong for you and your ability to appeal to the public?
Well, I'll just say to you that New Zealanders are expecting this government, and they voted for this government, to fix the economy.
So, morning report the next day, continuing in the same vein.
And, there's a number of polls and they sort of bounce around. But I'll just say to you, Kiwis didn't elect us to focus on polls. They elected us to fix the economy and get money into their back pocket. And, that's what my government and I'm doing each and every day.
So the poor poll results are a result of the fact that you haven't fixed the economy?
Well, actually, that's what New Zealanders voted us to do.
He's getting back to his lines, the pre-prepared lines about the economy. It's not working necessarily that well, but I thought he handled that interview pretty well. Mm-hmm. There were some telltale signs of discomfort, Emil.
Telltale signs of discomfort. Please go on.
You might have heard two of them in that clip that I just played.
Is one of them what I would say to you?
What I would say to you is that you are correct that actually it is saying what I would say to you. So I tried to put together a mashup of these using my amazing editing skills.
The economy hasn't improved as you promised it would.
Well, I'd just say to you, it has been a really tough time. We've inherited a very difficult set of circumstances, as you would understand. But I would just say to you...
Will you do it without dairy?
Well, I'd just say to you, we haven't started those negotiations, and we'll test whether there's more we can do on the visit. But I'd just say to you...
Looking like we're desperate.
I'd just say to you...
Look, I'd just say to you, Emil, that is a slightly higher what I'd say to you rate than... per minute than usual, and perhaps maybe I'm wrong here, but maybe it's a barometer of the Prime Minister's discomfort with a particular interview.
I mean,
that might be pseudoscience. It might be.
People do have, what I would say to you is people do have crutch phrases that they return to at times of pressure.
And I don't want to get too far into the psychology of this one, but I wonder whether this one in particular helps to transition away from what the question line is back into the preferred political line that you have prepped for the interview.
I don't know about that question you asked me, but what I would say to you is answer that I would rather give.
Yes, exactly.
Wasn't all doom and gloom for the Prime Minister, though?
No, there was some support over at trusty old News Talk ZB, where at least one of the hosts did seem to be in the denial stage of grief, maybe. This is Mike Hosking. He just simply did not believe this poll.
Now, the poll, I'm here to tell you this morning, is full of holes, and I wouldn't put any more weight on it than I would any other individual set of numbers.
Well, what's the reason why you wouldn't? Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you, Mike? Well, apparently it's all to do with the minor party results.
Let us just quickly dissect why it is not worth much. The Greens are up over 3 to 10. Not real. They have grown almost a third more support, have they? How? It hasn't happened.
Absolutely right. Hosking is absolutely onto something there, because that has not happened. In fact, the Greens went down 3%.
Yeah, the Greens. I thought that. Wait a second. Okay, yeah.
They actually dropped. So, I mean, it's a 23% drop, but I don't know whether you believe that or not. Still wasn't deterred by having the facts on that.
Wait, hang on. A 23%
I worked it out. I put into Google what's
sure.
the percentage drop between 13 and 10.
3 percentage points from 13 to 10.
It's 23, not an up
cool.
30%, as he said.
I appreciate
So it's
that.
gone down
clarification.
Not up. Economists, you can get in touch with me if I've got that wrong. He wasn't deterred, though, by having the facts absolutely incorrect on that. He reached a very strong conclusion, which is this.
But here is what I know from 40-odd years of radio ratings. Small players, i.e. the Maori Party, the Green Party, the ACT Party, they don't move in such large numbers unless something materially has changed. And nothing materially has changed.
Now, I don't have quite as many years' experience in radio ratings.
It's true.
But that doesn't sound like a particularly convincing and statistically robust critique of a poll to me. And in fact, I'm not alone in that assessment to me. Or this is Hosking's own producer Glenn Hart's take on his analysis.
Yeah, so we've got a poll out, but polls don't matter if the results don't agree with what you think. I think that's what we've learned from this poll.
Now for the bit.
Biting stuff from Mike Hosking's own producer there.
I mean, Glenn Hart is making fun there, but this was a Taxpayers Union Curia poll, and there has been some controversy over Curia and the quality of its polls, right? It's something to do with the beef with the Research Association.
Yeah, Curia, headed by David Farrar, long-time links with the National Party, of course, and it resigned from the Research Association of New Zealand back in August last year at his direction. And that was over some complaints about the wording of the questions in local polls that they've been doing. So not these national ones. There hasn't been the same questions over these national ones. Still, whenever a poll looks bad for one side, particularly if it's for the left, its provenance, if it's a Curia poll, does get brought up. And that's possibly why the man behind this poll, Taxpayers Union Executive Director Jordan Williams, had a slightly prickly defensive start to his interview with Ryan Bridge on News Talk ZB.
Taxpayers Union Executive Director Jordan Williams is with me tonight. Jordan, g'day.
G'day, Ryan.
Is this a trend? Is this something you start to freak out about?
Well, I don't freak out about it. I didn't have a pony in this race. I run a humble taxpayer.
I don't mean
group,
you. I mean, if you're on the 9th floor, do you start hitting panic stations?
Right, okay.
Yeah,
right.
Emergency.
Lost in translation.
We are not. We don't have a dog in this fight. Yeah.
I mean, it is something that you see quite a lot on social media, though, people questioning the veracity of Curia polls. What is your take as the Mediawatch? Are these polls credible? Because there is a diminishing number of political polls, and the polls that do get done are actually quite influential.
Yeah, and that's kind of an issue with this one. I think Jason Walls on News Talk ZB was saying this is the one that the political reporters hang out for now. It comes out monthly. We don't have Herald Digi polls anymore. There's far fewer polls than there used to be. And this one actually comes out and it gives them a bit of a trend line to look to. And actually, I think it's trustworthy. It seems to be. It predicted the last election pretty well from what I can make out. Now, it's worth noting that Curia is no longer a signatory to the Research Association New Zealand, particularly when it comes to its local polls, I think, because it doesn't give you that backstop that it's not signed up to a code of practice. It's just like a media organisation that's not signed up to the Broadcasting Standards Authority or the Media Council, for instance. But these national polls, they're done with the same methodology as a polling company like One News' one, Varian, 1,000 people, questions seem above board. So, yeah, I think you can trust them pretty well.
Kerry Woodham believed the results of this poll.
Yeah, she was in a more of a reflective mood than her colleague, and she offered up some advice for the PM, which I just think it was just quite unfortunately worded, Emile.
There's an old saying in advertising. To be successful, you don't sell the sausage, you sell the sizzle. Christopher Luxon may have a great sausage, but he's not selling its sizzle.
Well, it's just, I'm just not sure I would have phrased it that.
Well, live broadcasting, live microphones, you never know what's going to happen.
Oh, that was scripted.
Let's talk a bit about NZME.
This to which we should move on, shouldn't we?
Yeah. Let's talk about NZME and particularly the ownership of NZME. There's been some new information about the Canadian billionaire Jim Grennan's attempt to gain influence at NZME. What has he said then about editorial independence?
Yeah, this is the big concern that the ETU, the Journalists Union, has over there, that he will try to sway editorial lines at the company, assert influence over them somehow. Now, he issued a statement to the Herald's media insider Shane Curry, and he did hit back at the union. He said this was actually over this what he's trying to do. He's trying to get seats on the board, or well, usurp the board essentially, get rid of all its directors and replace them with his own people. He said this is really over operational concerns at the company. It's over how it's being run. It's not really editorial. That's a secondary concern. And he said, don't worry, union members, everyone should feel optimistic about their future at NZME. He offered some reassurances that there would be extra editorial investment, that kind of thing. But at the same time, he says, well, editorial obviously influences operational, the type of editorials what we're selling. So the new board intends, these are his words, to improve on the journalism with an emphasis on factual accuracy, less selling of the writer's opinion, and appealing to a wider political spectrum. He also says he's going to set up an editorial board with representation from both sides of the spectrum.
Right. An emphasis on factual accuracy, less selling of the writer's opinion, and appealing to a wider political spectrum, which all sounds good. That all sounds fair enough, right?
It does. It's no one could really disagree with that. It's really where the devil is in the details, because when you look at NZME right now, do you think that's not reflecting all sides of the political spectrum? Actually, you'd probably say it leans right. The Herald is pretty fair-minded. It goes it has commentators from both sides. It covers all sorts of issues. It represents the opinions of right-wing politicians. It has Richard Prebble as a columnist. It has Stephen Joyce as a columnist. So the question is what Jim Grennan means when he says he wants to appeal to a wider political spectrum. And the concern there is that it's not necessarily that he wants to get more emphasis on Friedman's economic theories or anything like that, but there might be some more out there beliefs.
And do we have any idea as to what those beliefs might be?
Well, I think, Colin went over some of them last week, I think, and he founded this website called The Centrist and a news service that's now defunct called NZME, Deliberate Provocation to NZME. It criticised, in The Centrist, it criticised NZME for its coverage of stuff like climate change, co-governance, other issues. And the other thing that Jim Grennan has done is he's backed the anti-vax influencer Chantal Baker in taking defamation action against NZME. So you can get some clues as to the areas that he might be interested in there, where he might be seeking balance. And are those political areas? For instance, climate change. Is that a political statement? Maybe there is more climate skepticism, climate denial on the right of the spectrum. It doesn't exclusively live there, and the reason why it might not be in newspapers or reputable news organisations is because actually journalists or editors have decided that the weight of the scientific opinion and the vast majority of all climate science points to climate change being real, and you don't want to misinform people. You don't want to not tell them the truth by trying to present this argument as if it's a 50-50 thing, a both sides thing, when really it's more like a 99.9.01 thing.
But, I mean, surely the editorial staff existing at the moment at the Herald surely would erupt were an owner to come in and start... And this is not necessarily to suggest that this would happen, but I guess what I'm saying is there are editorial safeguards in place to protect the independence of publications like the Herald and NZME's various journalistic properties.
Well, what are those safeguards? I mean...
Well...
There's always tradition. There's been traditions. There's norms, as we've seen recently. Norms can be overrun.
But he's not going to put himself he's not going to put himself right into the position of editor-in-chief, news director, website overseer, publisher.
No, And there will be ways to subvert influence, to manage up, to do all that sort of stuff that journalists will do, even if they disagree with the editorial direction. But we're seeing this more and more. We're seeing billionaires, wealthy individuals come in to news organisations. For instance, Jeff Bezos at the Washington Post he was hands off for a very long time. He's realised, actually, I can exert influence. He's directed their opinion section to focus on what he calls personal liberties and free markets. And yeah, the newsroom might erupt. In that case, I think they've had several high-profile resignations, but this is a precarious industry now. And that's the thing. You think, everyone will just quit. Where are they going to go? Well, there's not that many jobs out there. the companies that these people are buying aren't worth that much. That's possibly why they're buying them. And there's less power to exert back upon an owner if they do want to make these sorts of moves, I think.
He is a business guy, first and foremost. Do we, at a practical level, know about any or many of the changes he might intend to make to the Herald or to NZME as a wider business structure?
Yeah, and this is some of the operational stuff, and this was actually quite interesting and actually sounded kind of positive, to be honest. The Australian had some of these details. It seems to have some sources inside the Grennan camp or inside NZME's shareholders, I'm not sure which, but it said that possible options on the table under this new regime could be pulling back from plans to expand into news video streaming. Of course, the Herald is looking to do its live streaming, news streaming for 3 hours or so every morning and around the clock kind of streaming coverage. Another thing, a move to digital only publication, that might be a bit more controversial. That would be no more print Heralds. That would be an end of an era. More investment in top talent and editorial that would lift subscriptions at a time when advertising revenue for the mainstream media is declining. Look, a lot of that actually sounds relatively sensible, and especially the pivot away from news video. There is some deep skepticism inside that newsroom about that strategy, about the investment in that, especially if it's coming at the cost of what have been redundancies recently. So if there's actually a will to pull back from the news streaming, I wonder whether that part of it would actually be welcomed by the existing editorial staff.
And at the same time, the names of the people Grennan wants to name to the NZME board have been revealed.
Yes, we've got Simon West, who used to work at TradeMe, a director there. Des Giddings, who works at New Zealand private equity firm Maui Capital, and lawyer Philip Crump, expected to be nominated now.
Who was the editor-in-chief of, what was it called? Newstalk ZB Plus up until...
Exactly, a contracted to NZME, an employee, I guess, of NZME. I'm not sure what his arrangement was there until relatively recently. ZB Plus, kind of an effort maybe to take on players like the Platform or some of these emerging competitors to News Talk, folded relatively quickly. I'm not sure why. Couldn't seem to get traction, but Philip Crump ran that. He runs the Thomas Cramner Substack. He has been named to the Waitangi Tribunal. He's director of NZ On Air, so he seems to be inserting his fingers into quite a few of these different pies at the moment. Now, he's definitely on the right. He was pretty dogged in his prosecution of what he saw as issues with the Labour government's Three Waters legislation. Though it's probably worth noting his political takes have definitely tapered off since he's got all these appointments, particularly to the Waitangi Tribunal and all that. He's also been pretty outspoken about media organisations getting government funding, saying they basically have to wash their own faces. It's a new era and need to stand on their own 2 feet. So, yeah, kind of an interesting appointment there.
Yeah, I mean, Philip Crump would often publish interesting stuff on his Substack that I think that he has acknowledged that it comes from sort of a more conservative or centre-right perspective, and a lot of it quite contrarian and sort of going against what people might perceive as more common or lazy narratives in media. Often they were sort of deep dives into official documents and OAAs and things like that, weren't they?
Yes, he's an interesting one because he's very intelligent. He writes in a very particular and meticulous way. But then he also seems to definitely, if he's not part of it, he's definitely connected to some of these slightly wilder parts of the conservative internet spheres, and they definitely feed into him. So it's kind of this. Yeah, it's an interesting. He bridges a gap between, I think, two worlds there.
You also have an update, Hayden, about the use of artificial intelligence at NZME.
Yeah, I said in the weekend, I noted that the annual report from the company says it's going to invest in AI editing its homepage, basically ordering the stories on its homepage how it appears. Apparently that's actually already happening, though. Journalists got in touch to say, no, it's actually already happening. You know, we've tried to get them to reassign our stories or something on the homepage and been told, no, it's all automated now. So it seems like AI is already doing a bit of that work, and I outlined some of the concerns that could raise on the weekend show if you do want to seek that out. But basically, I think if the robots are doing that job, ordering what goes where on the homepage, then you could end up with some relatively clickable but not necessarily nutritious stories going a bit higher than they would otherwise.
On a somewhat related story, I see RNZ is advertising for an AI director.
Yes. What does that role entail? I just learned about this today. That it seems like RNZ. Everyone is doing it.
Yeah.
Is it good or not? Does RNZ need an AI director? Possibly. I guess it's going to be the future. You probably don't want to be left behind at the same time.
It's probably a sensible idea to.
If there's one place that's going to do human curation, though, it's got to be the public broadcaster where you don't have to worry about that commercial side of things. You're not doing it for cost-cutting reasons, that kind of thing.
It's probably sensible to remove ambiguity organisationally around how and when AI should be or is acceptable to be used.
Yeah, and that's a growing issue, and the Herald's had to deal with that very prominently when it used AI to write its editorials, which is not the policy and is not what they want to be doing.
Thank you, Hayden. Colin Peacock instructed you to come on and tell me, in fact, check me and tell me that Volodymyr Zelensky did not do the voice of Paddington Bear in Paddington 2.
So he told me, come and correct me or you'll get him. I feel like I'm being set up here. I Googled this. The correction should actually be to Colin Peacock. Yeah. Volodymyr Zelensky did do the Ukrainian language overdub for both Paddington 1 and Paddington 2. Emil Donovan, completely right. Colin Peacock, wrong again. And I think he should feel appropriately rebuffed.